Yo, what's going on YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and today we are taking a look, that's right, up in Hockeytown at the Detroit Red Wings and the latest on their situation with their captain, Dylan Larkin. Now, it's not really anything super big in terms of news, but there continues to be that speculation about what the future is going to be for the Detroit Red Wings captain. And again, I was more polarizing than I thought it would be. This past summer, I made a video talking about could the Red Wings potentially trade Dylan Larkin. And for the most part, there were obviously the loyalists who defended Larkin. He's never getting traded, played for the University of Michigan, from Michigan. He's never getting traded. But there was an alarming number of you, whether that's Red Wings fans or non-Red Wings fans, that were like, yeah, trade Dylan Larkin. Now, unfortunately, if you're one of the people that wants to see a Dylan Larkin trade, pump the brakes on that. It sounds more likely than not that Larkin will be sticking around in Detroit. Now, again, based off of this report, though, it's not necessarily a concrete answer in the sense that he will definitely be coming back, though. So, really, the latest on the front, it really comes down to what we've been hearing in the sense of it seems more like it's going to come down to the wire type of situation. So he's going to probably sign in Detroit, but again, the second that you start making things come down to the wire, you never really know what can happen with those situations. If it comes down to the wire, maybe something comes up late, and next thing you know, all of a sudden, Dylan Larkin's taking offers from other teams within a couple of days from then, right? So if it comes down to the wire, Detroit has to be really careful with how close, in terms of down to the wire, they actually take this thing. Because, like I said, we know how good Dylan Larkin is. He's played very well for the Detroit Red Wings this season, and he's going to look for a payday. I'd be guessing he's going to want to be the highest paid player on the Detroit Red Wings. Now, the good news is that isn't necessarily going to be that difficult. Considering his current contract situation, he is the highest paid player on the Detroit Red Wings, making $6.1 million per season, which is the highest on the team's salary cap, coming in at 7.5% of the team's salary cap. So that's the good news if you're a Red Wings fan. So you don't necessarily have to worry about, he has to get a number over this guy or this or that. He is going to be the benchmark, though, for the next couple of Red Wings at the end of their contracts. And that's really the key thing here. This is the precedent that, you look at the Tampa Bay Lightning, right? The Tampa Bay Lightning, how did they get all of those good contracts? It's because guys set the precedent for really good contracts, and everybody else had to sign for similar, if not less. And that's kind of what I think Steve Yzerman's going to try to do here in Detroit. And that is the same GM. So it wouldn't be all that surprising if he were to do something similar. And you guys remember, right? Victor Hedman, Steven Stamkos, even Nikita Kucherov, they took very nice contracts. And you consider all the Stanley Cups they've won and all the success they've had, they have some really, really good contracts. I mean, this is all from Steve Yzerman. The Hedman contract he signed back in 2016, 8-year, $63 million contract for Hedman. That's a really good contract. Nikita Kucherov, $9.5 million per year. He recently did Braden Point. That might have been Julien Brisebois, who is the current GM. That was Brisebois. So we're not going to do that one. I'm pretty sure the Stamkos contract was a Stevie Y acquisition. Let's take a look at that. Yes, it was. It was an 8-year, $68 million contract he signed back in 2016, and Stamkos was making $8.5 million per season. And again, he's still got 2 more years left on that contract. So Steve Yzerman is known for getting players for really good contracts. And like I said, I would expect nothing different this time around with the Detroit Red Wings. And the key is, yes, of course, Dylan Larkin's contract matters, and that is the precedent. But you have to remember the guys behind him. And who are some of those guys that are behind Dylan Larkin on contracts? And that's a great question. And there is a couple of pretty interesting names on the Red Wings that are due for a contract here in the next couple of years. Dylan Larkin, his contract obviously up this summer. Who else is here? Michael Rasmussen, his contract ends in 2024. Joe Veleno, his contract's up this year. Jonathan Berggren and Lucas Raymond are also up in 2024. Elmer Soderblom in 2025. Moritz Seider in 2024. So 2024 is looking like a pretty big year for the Red Wings in terms of some big contracts. So this is going to be an interesting point here for the Red Wings because they get Dylan Larkin's deal this year. And then next summer, 2 summers from now, not this coming summer, the next summer, 2 summers from now, the Red Wings are going to have a couple of big guys to re-sign, like I just mentioned. And not limited to Mo Seider, Lucas Raymond, Jonathan Berggren, and depending on what happens with Kubalik, Dominic Kubalik there as well. So it's going to be an interesting time here for the Red Wings. Listen, I'm excited for this team. I like seeing them play well. The Red Wings are in the chase for potentially making the playoffs. It's going to be difficult because there's at least 5 or 6 teams right now in that Eastern Conference trying to lock up the last couple spots in the Metro and those wild card spots. Every game matters in the Eastern Conference for these teams, and I think that the Red Wings are one of those teams that is just happy to be back in the mix, if nothing else. Of course, they want to get back to the playoffs, but just to be in the conversation at this point, I think is a sigh of relief for a Red Wings team that has not been anywhere near the playoffs here the last couple of years. So, in terms of Dylan Larkin, really the key thing you have to look at for Larkin is he's probably going to take his time in deciding what he wants to do. And also you have to look at it from Steve Yzerman's perspective, is he doesn't want to rush into a contract for his own right. So it's a little bit of Dylan Larkin maybe betting on himself, seeing if he can put up some really good numbers, rack up some good numbers here up until the end of the season. And Steve Yzerman, kind of the counter to that, and trying to see if he could maybe lower that number and try and get him back here in Detroit, hopefully before the trade deadline. And again, that's not really looking like that's what's going to happen, especially if it comes down to the wire. And if I'm a Red Wings fan, that's where I have my hesitancy. But the good news is they have a guy that grew up in Michigan, played for the Michigan Wolverines. He played in the Maize and Blue, drafted by the Red Wings in the first round, captain of the team. Those are things that will keep a player maybe from considering those options next spring if he does decide to wait till free agency. Maybe he'll have that hesitation because he's like, yeah, this is my home. This is where I'm meant to be. And he just signs that good contract. And ultimately, that's what I think will end up happening. I think he's going to sign a pretty team-friendly contract. This is his home. I do not see Dylan Larkin playing anywhere else. Again, it's definitely possible that he leaves next summer. But in my opinion, I think it's a little bit more likely at this point that he stays with the Red Wings, signs a nice long-term deal, and stays with this core of Detroit Red Wings players. Guys, let me know what you think down below. What do you guys think of the Detroit Red Wings potentially making this Dylan Larkin contract saga / contract come down to the wire? Are you guys a fan of that? Are you guys like, maybe we should trade him? Maybe we should lock him up a little bit sooner than waiting till next offseason? Let me know what you guys think. As always, thank you so much for watching, and let's go Red Wings.